Now welcome to another lightning response video, where this time we got a question from Joe Vogamore author who asked, "Hey Thor, I'm one of those who used to, before the sequel trilogy, consume any and all Star Wars. Well, not games so much, not being a gamer, I didn't buy it either. Neither did my son who's a Gen Z gamer to the core," and he's talking about Star Wars Outlaws here, which I did a video on yesterday. "I think that I'm on the out with Star Wars completely since the recent drama surrounding a certain show. Not only the drama of a bad show, but the ensuing fandom drama. I had recently written a whole standalone series about outlaw swoop bikers on Nar Shaddaa, but I won't release it because of the chaos surrounding the fandom. I'm just checked out now, and it's not because of a bad show, it's because of a fandom that will never be pleased, even if someone else takes over Star Wars. And first of all, I think you should release your story. But getting to it, I mean, certainly you're never going to be able to please everybody. That's the old saying, and I do fully believe that to be true. Though I will agree, not that you said this exactly, but I'll agree that the Star Wars fandom is, it's rather fussy at times. They demand quality, and when they don't get it, they can get quite upset, and it can be very frustrating or annoying to watch, or it is a sort of turn off to see it if you are part of the fandom. It can be frustrating to see just how at war we can be. Though that said, I certainly don't think fans are flat out wrong to get upset from time to time, and I don't think you disagree with me on that either. But as I always say, the fandom it's your customer base. They're the reason your product has value, because they're willing to act on good faith, which is what Disney has lost lately. But they're willing to act on good faith and buy and support whatever you put out there. So when you're not putting out a quality product, they have every right, as a customer who spent their money, to speak up and to complain. But anyway, getting back to it, no, you can't please everybody. No matter what is done with Star Wars, someone will always be unhappy and say something about it. However, I do think there are ways to please the vast majority of fans. I think we can look at something like The Mandalorian, the first season of it anyway, as an example of a time or a piece of content that most fans, certainly not all, but most fans seem to be very happy with the show. They seem to enjoy it, almost universally. And sure, I do think a potential contributing factor to the success and popularity or acceptance of the show was that it came off the heels of the sequel trilogy. I do think to some degree we can argue how much or how little, but people liked it because it was just better than the sequels, or just wasn't the sequels. I also think using completely brand new characters in The Mandalorian, again in the first season at least, it got a little heavy with the legacy characters in season 2, but I think it was a great decision to use new characters. I think you obviously have way more flexibility with your creative decisions when you create new characters, and especially when you stick them into a sort of new setting, or one largely detached from everything and everyone else in the lore. That when you use characters from previous stories, especially the beloved ones, like the ones from the films, the legacy characters, not only is the flexibility you have with them extremely limited, because people have very strong preconceived notions on who or what these characters are or should be, so any change made to them, especially a rather drastic one like, say, Luke in The Last Jedi, it is going to upset people who do not believe, who will never accept that this is what becomes of their hero. Furthermore, the expectations are just naturally going to be much higher as well. Some of these characters have literally had a profound impact on people's lives. So seeing them in a half-assed story devoid of any real meaning, or used just to lure them in to get their money, it is going to be very annoying. You can understand why people would get so upset about seeing a character they have loved for decades, one who maybe defined their childhood to a degree, seeing them become something else, and all for the sake of Disney wanting to tap into your wallet because they know your emotional attachment to them. They know you were automatically going to watch them. However here, and I know I've said this before, but it's not like Disney hasn't made some good Star Wars. They have. They've actually made a few things that I'd even categorize as great Star Wars. The problem is they get the things they absolutely need to get right, they get those wrong, or wrong in the eyes of many fans. Things like the sequel trilogy and the Kenobi series, things that again include legacy characters. The ones that people have loved for decades, and maybe read about 100 stories in the EU about them, that seem to understand and respect the characters a hell of a lot more. those are the ones they screw up and get wrong, while something like Andor they get, in my opinion, they get that very right. And in reverse world, in a reality where they had nailed the sequel trilogy, where again the vast majority of fans had loved it, not everyone is going to love it, but the vast majority loved it, and it eventually gets followed up by at least solid Boba Fett series, a series that no isn't the most profound story for the character ever, but we get to see him go out into the galaxy and, I don't know, maybe he seeks revenge against Han or something like that, and along the way we get to see him just kicking some butt and taking some names, and maybe a few flashbacks to his previous days. And if you do something like that, I think you have a pretty solid show that most fans, again, are going to enjoy. And then we get a much better, and in this case, in this alternate flipped reality, a much more profound story about Obi-Wan Kenobi set between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope. One that doesn't just exist to give us the rematch of the century, which is what the point of the Kenobi series felt like. It felt like an excuse to have those two fight again so that you could get people to watch it, not because they actually had any kind of deep introspect about Kenobi himself, which is, I'd argue, what a lot of fans would really like out of a Kenobi series. And then, after those successes, again in this alternate flipped reality, Andor comes out, and it is absolutely terrible. It is just trash. And if that were to happen, I think, well, no, fans aren't exactly going to be happy that the show sucked. But I think most kind of shrug their shoulders and say, well, they really can't all be winners, and they just move on, especially with it being relatively new characters in Andor, short of course, seeing Cassian in Rogue One before, which I guess in alternate flipped reality world, Rogue One wouldn't be very good, but that's not the point. Anyway, if Disney and Lucasfilm get a show like that wrong, something like Andor, new characters, new setting, kind of new ideas altogether, after racking up several wins, especially with legacy characters in the sequels and Kenobi and Boba Fett, I think by and large the fandom is kind of just fine right now. Again, for the most part, there's always going to be people unhappy, and they do have every right to be unhappy. I'm not saying they don't. Everybody has the right to give their opinion on something, even if it disagrees or is opposing the majority. But anyway, despite the reputation this fandom often gets, which I'm not saying isn't entirely unearned. Again, I understand being tired of some of the childish behavior out of some fans on both sides of the debate, and I'm not always perfect myself in this department. I am human, I get upset too, I say some really stupid things from time to time. But I don't think fans expect perfection, not that you said or even implied they do in your comment, but instead I think they just demand truly best efforts with everything, and if something doesn't deliver, as long as you're not tarnishing legacy characters, and they feel like a best effort was truly given, or maybe you tried something a little new and different that just didn't land or work out. But if a few things fail from time to time, and most things tend to deliver, I think the fandom can or would be in a pretty good place right now. I think there would be relative peace. In other words, I do put more of the blame on Disney not delivering than on the fandom not having reasonable expectations. Yes, again, I think the fans maybe do expect a bit too much from time to time, but I think they have the right to expect a lot. They are the lifeblood of the franchise, in my opinion. Without them, there is no franchise. There is no money for Disney to make. So if you're not making them happy, what exactly are you doing, Disney? And speaking of wondering what in the heck Disney is doing, I do think that whenever Kennedy does go, which I'm really thinking will be sooner rather than later, I do think Disney is truly getting tired of her, or so you would think. But I think there will be this moment when she goes, this opportunity for them, for Disney and Lucasfilm, where many fans will give them a fair second chance, or as fair as they can. And they will likely even greet that second chance with a fair deal of excitement and a little bit of hope and belief sprinkled in as well. I think there will be a chance when Kennedy goes to win back a lot of fans. And if they do somehow get the right person in there to replace Kennedy, I mean, in theory, they could be worse, not that I even want to say that, but if they get the right person in there and they start churning out some really good shows and good movies, it's not like the past will be completely forgotten or forgiven or anything, nor will absolutely everyone give this person a second chance or give Star Wars a second chance. I think there are many fans just done no matter what who hate Disney at this point and will never return out of principle unless somehow Disney sells or loses Star Wars someday, which I don't see happening. But I do think if someone new gets in there, and again, most things are good, and especially anything that uses legacy characters are good, that is always going to be a key. You always have to get them right. Fans will not be forgiving in that category. But I think there will be some healing in the fandom. I think we could get to a place where, no, not everyone is happy and everything is great. Once again, always going to be people unhappy. But either way, I think we could get to a good place again in Star Wars. I do. I really do. Or at least I very much desperately want to believe that to be true. I want to see Star Wars and the fandom be fixed because, yeah, despite everything else, I still do and always will, I'll root for Star Wars. There are few things I want more than to see Star Wars return to prominence and for the war in the fandom to settle down. I don't think it ever goes away. We're always going to be disagreeing and arguing and debating, but we don't need to hate each other like I think some of us do right now. That could certainly stop and things would be a whole lot better. Well, that's going to be all I got for you this time. Now it is your turn to take to the comments below and tell me what you think about any or all of this. Tell me if you think Star Wars fans have too high of expectations, or if just Disney and Lucasfilm not delivering, especially when they really need to with characters like legacy characters, if that is more of the problem. Or you can always ask a question for a future lightning response video. Just got to start your comment off with "Hey Thor" and then ask away. But whatever you choose to do, leave a comment below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.